Okay, moving on to item 3.2. This is the East 29th Street Safety and Mobility Improvements report. So I'm going to go to, I believe, is it Mr. Carney? Are you commenting on it first, or?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll be presenting.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Can you please confirm that you can see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening. The purpose of this presentation really is to provide an update on the performance of East 29th Street, the Safety and Mobility Project, and to report back on the July 22nd, 2019 Council resolution. And so this is the resolution from 2019 that staff report back on the number of left-hand turn lanes traveling west into Tempe Heights, and that the report at the time is received for information, and also that staff report back on the parking zone variance applications, potential lane openings, and also a potential drop-off zones. And this is really in response to some of the concerns that were, articulated by residents. So just a quick overview of the project. The project had to consider many factors, including traffic volumes, collision and safety data, transit requirements, sidewalk and crosswalk needs, cyclist safety, vulnerable road users, considering the proximity to Boundary Elementary School there at William. Also intersection capacity, property, access, utilities, etc. In addition to these needs, staff also had to consider the strategic planning documents that we have, including the OCP, the action plan, the bike and pedestrian master plans, etc. A quick report back on some of the speed and collision data. I wanted to share this just because, at the time there were some concerns that a traffic signal at William would actually increase speeds along the corridor. We found the opposite. Speeds have dropped by approximately 7 kilometers, as you can see here in both directions, since the replacement of the four-way stop control at William with the traffic signal. And also we're seeing a reduction in crashes. Of course, this is just, typically in traffic engineering, when you're looking at collision statistics, you like to look at about a 10-year period, 5 to 10-year period to get enough, data points. So this is really just an early indication that we are seeing a reduction in crashes from 23 reported in 2018 prior to construction, and now down to 15. In terms of cycling volumes along 29th, we are seeing about 50 cyclists a day. And so it's not one of the strongest performers in terms of our corridors, but I would say steady use. So just reporting back on the number of left turn lanes, there's really just the 2. So there's one at Somerset and Tempe Crescent. This is for the westbound left turn. Some of the justification for these left turn lanes along 29th Street, that we worked through during the design process are that, the left turn lanes, it's really more of a safety benefit than a capacity. It's more safety driven than capacity. The left turn lanes enable drivers to have better, to wait for gaps in oncoming traffic and essentially reduce the risk of rear end type crashes. They also improve sight lines towards oncoming vehicles. And so I think they've been a key part of some of the demonstrated safety benefits that we've seen now in the corridor. Reporting on some of the work that staff have done since the implementation of the project. We were quite flexible in terms of accepting and approving parking zone variance applications. And so By that, I mean, we have guidelines, for example, for driveway width, but we relax this to better facilitate access to and from properties. Another example would be there's also requirements around site coverage and how much of your property can be paved, for example. And so we've been flexible in accepting or approving applications to increase the paved area so that vehicles it's more easy to maneuver vehicles around on private property. We also looked at potential lane openings, and that's what's shown here in the graphic. So the one is, I'm not sure if you can differentiate the two colors, but the one is essentially between Frome and St. Christopher's. So that's the green arrow. And a second opportunity is the blue that extends down to Dryden, just south of Ross Road. At this time, we're not recommending that we open lanes. And the primary reason for this is there's quite a few mature trees in this area, and we don't feel that that the trade-off is worth the removal of these trees. There's other considerations as well in terms of cost, drainage, for example, but I think the primary driver here in that recommendation is just to avoid tree loss. In terms of drop-off zones, we've looked at two different concepts. I'll call them options A and B. So option A is similar to what we're actually proposing on the Lynn Valley Road project. So this is a short parking pocket that could be constructed between driveways. Because we have so many driveways on 29th, there's limited locations where this is really feasible, but there are a couple that we have identified where it is possible. The cost is approximately $50,000 per zone, and we would have the space to build something that could accommodate 3 to 4 vehicles if supported by council. In some cases, the trade-offs involve the removal of vegetation, including trees and hedges. So as part of the original design, that was one thing we wanted to avoid, was being highly disruptive. So just so that council is aware, that is a trade-off, that there would be some, not encroachment, it is district property, but it would involve some vegetation removal. It does look like we would be able to design it so that the bike lane would be in between the parking zone and the sidewalk. And so this is the benefit in this is that the cyclists are less exposed to the travel lane. And in the event that, well, the risk of being doored is far less, just in this general concept where the bike lane is between the parking and the sidewalk. Because of course it would be the passenger that would need to exit the vehicle, and then of course if that did happen, you would fall onto the sidewalk and not into a travel lane. So for those two reasons, it's a preferred configuration. And again, we're showing this as option A. Option B is we looked at the idea of creating some. It's more regulatory, but it could involve some sidewalk extensions where on some of the adjacent side streets, we could designate some curb space to short-term parking. And this would, the downside really is that it reduces the number of longer-term parking spaces, and it's not as convenient for mid-block properties. So we're not confident that it would be really effective in addressing those concerns. And again, like the side streets that we looked at, St. Christopher and Macefield, would require some sidewalk extension. And so the estimated cost is about $35,000 per zone. Of course, that it depends on how far we were. You know, if it's space for one vehicle or two vehicles, there's some latitude there in terms of working within a budget. An alternative option, and this really speaks to some of the feedback that we've had from solid waste collection from our own district staff, where, and it's not entirely unique to 29th, but the scenario is that with the delineator posts in what we call the buffer space in between the travel lane and the bike lane, the solid waste vehicle or the garbage truck can't pull up right up to the curb. And so what it's causing some delay and some illegal maneuvers, illegal passing maneuvers, and some concern, safety-related concern that's been communicated to us from our own solid waste folks. And so one of the ideas here is, the alternative option is to remove the delineator posts so that the solid waste vehicle could pull up to the curb. And then what we could do in combination is a short, and we're showing it here in the graphic, it's a short barrier assembly that really is used near intersections to bring attention to the bike lane facilities and to define the space, and then to provide some added protection in these higher conflict zones. So it wouldn't involve moving curbs or anything. It's really more that buffer zone treatment. But it's a bit more flexible in the sense that it could also be used informally for drop-off pickup. It wouldn't be formal parking, but very short-term stopping could be enabled through this modification. But the primary driver really is to better facilitate the solid waste operations. And so the recommendation, really, I know Mayor Little, you mentioned earlier that it's a workshop. We're not voting on an outcome here, but the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that we receive the report for information, and that staff be directed to develop some of these concepts a bit further, and make a final recommendation during a regular council meeting. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.